Hello, my name is Clayton, and welcome to episode 129 of the Watch Dog Podcast. I'm a professional dog runner and watch enthusiast talking to his pals about dogs and watches. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for listening. You know I appreciate it. I'm so sorry for missing an episode last week, but I have a good excuse for it. And it's going to lead into today's main topic, believe it or not. But first of all, I just want to check on everybody. Much of the United States, if you live in the U.S., much of the United States is about to experience Snowmageddon this weekend, right? Here in the Northeast, anyway, we're expecting up to 2 feet of snow. Now, it's possible that all the meteorologists are wrong and it will be a dud. But you know what? I'm mentally preparing for a snow day on Monday. There's something really cozy, I think, about an entire region preparing for a snow day. Everybody talking about the movies they're going to watch and the TV shows they're going to catch up on. I don't know. We're all collectively embracing the snowstorm. And I don't know. I think that's kind of cozy and kind of cool. If we don't get a lot of snow on Monday, I will be very disappointed. It will be a mental letdown, that's for sure. Recently got a snowblower. And that's ready to go. We're all stocked up on all the staples. So I say, bring on the Snowmageddon. Of course, where I'm originally from in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and other parts of the country as well, they're experiencing awful, awful winters right now. It's stock for the Upper Peninsula. I mean, every year they get about 300 inches of snow and just awful wind chills and Arctic temperatures. I'm hearing long-term residents, people I know who have lived there their whole lives, saying that this is the worst conditions they've ever driven in. They don't remember this kind of wind chill. So you know it's bad if those people are saying that. And they're also rolling their eyes at me. My friends Jeremy and other people I know who still live up there who listen to the podcast regularly for complaining about my winter. But I've become a baby. What can I say? All joking aside, though, if you are about to experience severe winter weather in the next few days, just please be careful. Don't drive if you don't have to, or stay outside for an extended period of time. Frostbite is a real thing. Of course, I say that as somebody who's going to run 15 miles after recording this episode, and it's like 5 degrees outside. So do as I say, not as I do. And I also wouldn't be the watchdog if I didn't mention pets. Right? Please bring your pets in during this extremely cold and wintry weather. Dogs, if you have your dog outside, they don't want to be outside in this. They're sentient beings. They have feelings. They feel cold. Their paws get cold. Their paws get cut up on ice. So please bring them in. Outdoor cats, bring them in. Please keep them warm during the next few days. All right, off my soapbox. So speaking of warm, we were down in South Carolina last week, which is part of the reason I didn't find the time to record an episode. We have a sick relative down there who is recovering from pneumonia. She has some other underlying health issues as well. And I know through therapy and rest, she will be back better than ever in no time. And I also wanted to give a shout out to an extended family member of mine and loyal listener of the podcast, Steve. He recently had a terrible car accident and has a number of devastating injuries he's facing. A long road to recovery. But Steve, I know you will fight and I know you will get through it in no time. I hope I can provide some entertainment for you and maybe cheer you up a little by mentioning you here. I know you're on the road to recovery and hopefully we'll see you soon. We miss you. Haven't seen you guys in a long time. So heal up, Steve. And then, last but not least, the hits keep coming with us. Our dog, Lolly, more likely than not, has a cancerous mass in her belly. She just had her regular oncology checkup this week, and they found it. And maybe something in her bladder as well. Believe it or not, we feel lucky. She was given 6 months to live 3.5 years ago with lymphoma. She started chemo, and swollen lymph nodes immediately disappeared. They came back once, like a year later, and then through another drug, disappeared immediately. We thought she was given, a death sentence of 6 months, and 3.5 years later, she is still a happy, active dog, and we feel so blessed to have that extra time with her. We knew this day would probably come eventually. Her oncologist has said that this is the longest any dog has lived with her type of cancer, so we're extremely grateful for that, but we knew this would come, and it sucks. You know what? It just sucks. Okay, why on earth am I telling you all of these very personal things? The word luxury. right? We'll get to it. Listen, I love watches. I have a podcast about watches, so you know I'm in deep. You are listening to this podcast, so I know you're in deep, right? This hobby has brought me great joy, lifelong friends. It cost me a lot of money, but still, I wouldn't trade any second of it for anything. I love watches. I love the hobby. However, I know that watches themselves are maybe the ultimate luxury good. We don't need one at all. These days, our phones tell the time. Watches used to be a handy tool. Everybody throws the word tool watch around. I do too, and I use them as a tool from time to time. But we don't need one. Even a $10 Casio F91W is now a luxury item. We don't need them. However, we want them. What's the title of today's episode? You've seen it. Is Seiko a luxury brand? While there might be literal definitions of the word luxury and what a luxury brand is, Seiko may or may not fit into that. We'll get into that in a second. But we also have our own individual definitions of what luxury means to us. And that's based on a number of factors, our personalities, our financial situations, etc. For us, having a healthy dog who isn't sick is a luxury. I'm going to try really hard not to get emotional here. Whew, it's been a rough week. For us. But you know what? Things that most of us might take for granted in normal life is a luxury for others. Breathing, walking, having your dog be healthy, all things that we take for granted, but a major luxury for some people. And also we can make a drinking game of how many times I say luxury in this episode. Drink something light, drink a low alcohol percentage beer because you're about to get drunk. Okay. Recently on Watch social media, a gentleman posted pictures of two Seiko divers. Last year's SLA 081, the return of the Marine Master, a proper return of the Marine Master, I would say. If you listen to my episode with Keith, where we named our top 10 watches of last year, that made number 5 on his list. Was an honorable mention for me, but didn't make it on. And then this poster here also put up a picture of the SLA 025, which has a high beat movement. To sum up his post and what he said that because of these models and other high-end Seiko offerings, that Seiko is a luxury brand. From the high beat movements to the Grand Seiko level finishing, Seiko is luxury. And if you disagree with that, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like we said before, this person used their own definition of luxury. In his opinion, features that make a luxury watch are caliber or movement, finishing, sapphire crystal, ceramic bezel, solid end links, high quality clasp, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I love high-end Seiko, but high quality clasp, even on my SNR 045, the clasp is not high end. But anyway, that I guess we can digress off of that. But he goes on to say, sometimes the materials used come into play, but not often, since most stainless steel watches use the same grade of steel. It's not the price that makes something a luxury product. That is just perception. And okay, that last statement is something I find super interesting. And I'm paraphrasing a lot of what this guy said, but I'm not taking it out of context in any way. This is really what he said. I'm just kind of shortening it up for our purposes here. But let's, before we get going, take a look at the literal definition of luxury. This is from Oxford. It's a noun, luxury, the state of great comfort and extravagant living, and they use it in a sentence. He lived a life of luxury. And then they go on to give a similar example definition, an inessential, desirable item which is expensive or difficult to obtain. And they use it in a sentence, luxuries. Luxuries like raspberry vinegar and state-of-the-art CD players. Whoa, maybe dated, but I don't know. I guess a CD player is a luxury item these days. New cars don't ship with them anymore. So I guess, and computers don't really ship with CD drives anymore either. You have to get like an external one if you want to burn your CDs onto your computer. So I guess a state-of-the-art CD player is a luxury these days. We've come full circle. Ding, 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 though, with that definition, right? And that's often what I think of when looking at the broader meaning of luxury and what a luxury watch is. Rolex is luxury because whether it's manufactured scarcity or not, they can be super difficult to obtain. We've all heard horror stories about the authorized dealer. I've been waiting over 3 years or whatever it is for the titanium Yachtmaster, which I think is a pipe dream probably at this point, right? Even if you have the money, a lot of other things go into whether you can get a Rolex at the authorized dealer or not. Anything above Rolex is super expensive and difficult to obtain. Audemars Piguet, Patek, also world-class watchmaking as well, right? So I would classify them as a luxury item, a luxury watch. Then you have Moser, Chapek, Arm & Strom. They're not difficult to obtain outside of the financial part of it, right? If you have a spare $25,000, $30,000, they're not super hard to obtain, like scarcity games or anything like that. You just have to have the money, $30,000 of disposable income to purchase one of these watches. So I would classify that as luxury item, and also impeccably made watches. The craft of watchmaking is present in a lot of these independent brands. So I would say they are luxury items. And then there's fringe brands, Omega and Tudor. In the literal sense of the term, I'm not sure Tudor is a luxury watch, a luxury brand. However, for some people and their own situations, getting back to everybody's individual definition of luxury, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 is a huge amount of money to drop on a watch. So for some people, their Tudor Black Bay 58 is a luxury item, maybe the most expensive non-essential thing they own. So of course, on an individual basis, Tudor can be a luxury brand, but in the general sense, I don't think so. How about Omega? Maybe you're not for quality alone, but just, price. Before, but definitely now, a Speedmaster is $9,000. A sapphire sandwich. We've talked about hypothetical situations before where, the guy saw the moon landing or other space missions as a kid, and he's not a watch guy, but the Speedmaster has always been this thing. What if I could afford it someday? I'm going to get a Speedmaster. And it used to be, $6,600. I think when I bought mine, I bought the Hesselite. It was $5,600, and the sapphire sandwich was $1,000 more. And now a sapphire sandwich that's 4 years later is $9,000. So that guy, all of a sudden, if he wants one nice watch, one magical watch he's wanted since he was a kid, the Speedmaster, he has to fork over, $3,000 more, pretty much, for that watch. That is a luxury. So Omega, obviously there are some super expensive Omega watches. The new Reverse Panda gold version is $50,000. So yeah, Omega has levels where they are definitely a luxury item for sure. Cartier, I would say, is an interesting example, right? The name exudes luxury. It's a famous name because of jewelry and watches, but most people, I think, know them from jewelry. That's probably what I thought of before I got into watches. Like Cartier is a jewelry brand for rich people. That's probably what I would have thought, right? But they have a broad price range for their watches, but even a quartz tank is thought of as a luxury item. Other brands probably not able to get away with that, but Cartier can. And that's where I want to get back to what the poster said in the post I'm talking about. The poster of this comment talked about perception. More often than not, perception is reality with consumers. Many times we don't get the chance to handle these watches in person, so perception is all we have. Definitely the case with higher-end Seiko models like my SNR 045 and the models the poster mentioned, right? Most people cringe and laugh at the fact that Seiko has $5,000 and $6,000 watches. If I paid full retail for my SNR 045, it would have been about $6,600. Most enthusiasts would think you're a fool to do that. And of course, you can get discounts on these models, but still, how much of a discount am I going to get? If I bought it new, I'd probably still be paying somewhere around $5,500 to $6,000 for that watch brand new. People scoff at that, and that is kind of the opposite of luxury, in my opinion anyway. If people could see these higher-end Seiko models in person, and Seiko did a better job of marketing them, I don't think the ridicule and noise would be quite as loud. But Seiko is perceived, that word there, perceived as an affordable brand, even though prices have crept up a little bit. And they've definitely have since I got into the hobby. You can get a turtle for a few $100s. I kind of think those days are gone. Also, among enthusiasts anyway, Seiko quality control is not highly regarded, right? misaligned bezels. So the perception is that Seiko make affordable watches that may not be of the best quality. They are beloved and have a great history, of course, but modern Seiko does have that quality control tag on it. Seiko as a brand is an interesting case, I think, because they have watches that are a couple $100s that you can buy on Amazon, Macy's, the mall, and then they have beautifully finished high-end watches at boutiques with high beat and spring drive movements that are like $6,000. Like I said, we're not talking Grand Seiko either. We will eventually, but not right now. That's just Seiko. I think Citizen now has the similar problem. I would not consider Citizen a luxury brand, but I have owned the Citizen model, which I think you could call a luxury watch and competes with watches in that $3,000 to $4,000 price range. Much of the Citizen models are handmade, beautifully finished, Zaratsu polished, washi paper dials that are put on hand. I mean, that's a luxury item, in my opinion. Yet there's no special delineation when you look at the watch. It still says Citizen on the dial. I have argued that it should say the Citizen, but nope, it just says Citizen. Just like a $150 Citizen you can buy at the mall. There's no delineation there. So I think it's confusing for the average consumer, and a reason why a lot of people scoff at the prices of Citizen models, the Citizen models, like they do the expensive Seikos. Okay. So if a brand sells $150 mall watches, Citizen does, and Seiko certainly does, right? If you go into any Macy's, Kohl's, or heck, every time I go to my Seiko authorized dealer, I walk right by the section with $150 quartz Seiko watches in there. You might see the Seiko Tanko. I can't believe I said that correctly. I've been practicing. That's a tongue twister. It's the Cartier Tank Homage that Seiko does. Yeah, you see all those, let's face it, fashion watch Seikos in that section, right? So if a brand has those, but on the other hand, has hand-finished masterpieces that rival Swiss icons, right? I'll put the SNR 045 or the SLA 081, that the original poster of this comment I'm talking about pictured. I'll put that up against the S&P 300 all day long. I have said that a bunch in multiple episodes, and I've owned both. And I would pick this SNR 045 over the S&P. I'd probably pick it over a Planet Ocean. I'd pick it over a BB58 at this point, or really anything Tudor does. The Pelagos FXD, I don't know. That might be dicey. I do love that watch. But I don't know. Spring drive on this SNR 045 kind of puts it over the edge for me. But anyway, so if we on one hand have a brand that offers fashion watches, on the other hand has offerings like the SNR 045, what does that make them? I think the answer is complicated. All right. To wrap up here, I have one more exercise where I want to determine if Seiko is indeed a luxury brand or not. And then I'll give you my opinion. I know I've skirted around my own opinion here, adding it in a little here and there. But first, I want to redefine luxury and talk about Seiko in each of these four categories that I came up with here. So first, is luxury about price? The person who posted this comment did not think so. He thought price had nothing to do with luxury. As we saw in the literal definition, it does. It's part of it, right? A luxury car, a luxury watch is going to be expensive. That's not the only determining factor, and sometimes maybe they're not all that expensive relatively, but it is about price. And also, I think that is my opinion. Yes, I'll start inserting my opinion now. I can't hide from it anymore. So yes, I think luxury is about price, even though the original poster here disagreed. Finishing and craftsmanship, absolutely. As we talked about with, Patek, Audemars Piguet, Longa, Rolex to a point, right? The craftsmanship, a lot of it's done by hand. When you get to some of these independent brands that I talked about, you go up in price, Gronfeld, all these brands, most of it is all done by hand, right? And with the SNR 045, we can say that too. And with the Citizen, there are artisans who train for years to make these watches by hand. They are polished by hand. In the case of the Citizen, those movements, the eco-drive movements and the washi paper, that's all done by hand by skilled artisans who train for years. So, you know what? I think we can call the SNR 045 and maybe the Citizen luxury watches. Yet to be determined if that makes Seiko and Citizen a luxury brand, though, right? Exclusivity. Now, you may laugh when you talk about expensive Seikos, but they are typically limited. I know Rolex has scarcity, whether it's manufactured or not, and it can be tough to get them. They're available all day long on the secondary market. You just have to pay extra for them. But let's take a few of the high-end Seiko models we've mentioned here so far today, right? The SLA 081, 600 pieces made worldwide of that watch. I heard a ridiculously low number came to the United States, and it was really hard to get. You want to buy one now that they've all sold out from authorized dealers? Go on Chrono24. I just did a search. There are 2 available in the US. There are 3 available on Chrono24 total. 2 in the US. One was $8,500 and the other was $9,000. What did that watch retail for? $6,000, $6,600, something like that. Kind of exclusive. Now you may be able to talk them down a little bit, but probably not too much. That is a very in-demand watch and coveted by Seiko collectors. The Seiko paths love the SLA 081. My SNR 045, which I did buy pre-owned, I did not buy brand new. There is not one that I could find on the internet for sale. I'd seen a couple last year. When I looked, I briefly flirted with selling it. So I was just kind of trying to gauge what I might be able to get for it. And there was one on there. I don't believe it was brand new, but it was something like $8,000 US. It was not listed in the United States. I think it was in Japan, perhaps. But yeah, so, and the SLA 025, I mean, good luck. You're going to be paying a lot more than retail for that. And the SJE 093, I bought that retail. I actually got a discount on that. Topper has them routinely now, and they sell right away, and they're above retail. So, you know what? There is some exclusivity there. If you don't get in on retail, some of these in-demand Seiko watches are hard to get. So, perhaps a little exclusivity. Status signaling. Having an expensive Seiko, as I've talked about, is more often a cause for ridicule than being celebrated, right? You have to be really in love with Seiko to drop thousands on one. Now, sometimes the vintage models, like if you find a really rare Pogue or something, that is a status symbol to a point. I think even, celebrated collectors will have some of the more vintage Seiko models. And, some of the 7A28 chronographs, that kind of thing. But you still have to be really deep. The average person is just going to see a Seiko. And again, because Seiko is not perceived as luxury, and if you were to tell them how much you paid, they might look at you twice, right? So among watch enthusiasts, sure, a watch like the SNR 045, if you find the right person, they might be impressed. But I don't know if Seiko quite has status signaling. Okay. So, yeah, I wrote down a note here. Oftentimes we buy luxury watches not to tell the time. That's way down the list, right? You can buy something very inexpensive. They're about telling other people who you are and maybe yourself to a point, right? Keith and I on the last episode, I think, talked about keeping up with the Joneses a little bit. And, also just rewarding yourself for hard work and also being in love with the craftsmanship. It doesn't all have to be a flex. It's not all ego. We buy expensive watches for a number of different reasons. Maybe there's a little of that flex, but I know for me, that's very little. There's very little. It's mostly about craftsmanship, the bracelet feeling great. That's why I love Rolex. One of the reasons I love Rolex, the Air King anyway, maybe not all the watches, but the bracelets are just phenomenal. And you don't really get that. I've never found that with Omega. I've owned 4 Omega watches and I've never been impressed. Everybody talks about the Speedmaster bracelet. I thought it was borderline bad, but I'm in the minority there. But Rolex just nails bracelets and they're just rock solid. A few other things here before we get into our final argument. I think a watch can be well made without being luxury. Seiko, despite the quality control issues they have, they make a good watch. They don't have to be luxury. Ultimately, who cares if they're a luxury brand or not, right? If you like it, wear it. Tudor makes an awesome watch. Are they luxury? Is the Pelagos FXD a luxury diver? Maybe not to me. Like I said, maybe to someone else, it is. Yeah, it's still a damn good watch. So who cares if it's luxury? And also, I think a watch can be luxury without being technically superior. Like I said, the Cartier tank, even a quartz tank, I would consider a luxury watch just because of the brand name and the prestige that goes along with it. You may disagree with me completely, but I think if people see you wearing a Cartier, they think luxury. People see you wearing an expensive Seiko, they're confused. I thought Seiko were affordable. I didn't know Seiko went up in price like that. All right, so let's make a case real quick against Seiko being luxury, and then we'll make a case for, and then I'll give you my ultimate opinion. All right. Seiko sells watches, like I said, Macy's, Amazon. They have a massive production. I don't know how much they make, but if Rolex produces 1.2 million watches per year, how many watches must Seiko be making? A lot. I know Seiko does have the LX line and more expensive watches, but entry-level models are, 90 something percent? And we can argue what entry-level means. I'd say anything under $1,500 is entry-level. I know it's all subjective, but I think that's kind of where we have to delineate. That's still where Seiko kind of dominates, even though they are going up a little bit. So that's the majority of their offerings. Watches like the SNR 045 and the SLA 081 make up a very tiny percentage of their overall offering. You know, a brand that sells at Amazon and Macy's, do they get to call themselves luxury? I don't know. I'm not so sure. Rolex would never, ever do that, right? They control their image through marketing and how and where they sell their watches. It is damn hard to get a Rolex, even in entry level. I see people getting offered Air Kings. Keith said he got offered one just going into the shop, and then I've seen people waiting a year and a half for one. I waited less than 3 months. But and I would say the Air King is more of an entry-level offering in Rolex's lineup. Better than the OP, right there with the Explorer in terms of specs and everything. And most people like the Explorer much more because of the wacky dial on the Air King. But Rolex would never sell their watches on Amazon. You know, some do make it on their pre-owned. Walmart, I've seen Walmart, and I think that's just like, not officially being sold at Walmart, but Walmart will have the occasional used watch, used Rolex on their website. But Omega even. I think they don't want to be known as a mall brand, and they try not to be in malls. So, for that, I don't think Seiko is a luxury brand. How about the case for Seiko being a luxury brand? They are fully integrated. That's rare even in Switzerland. Rolex is maybe the only other one, and they're only fully integrated because they bought all the component companies. They bought the company that makes their bracelets and, all the other components. Seiko, it's all organic for the most part. They even make the oils, the lubricants. They make everything. They are fully integrated. If they were a Swiss brand, I think they would be the pinnacle of luxury. And some brands make parts that they sell to other brands. I know Moser does that, for instance. I think Rolex and Seiko are known as the two most vertically integrated watch brands, and I think Seiko even more so than Rolex. So yeah, if they were Swiss, they would be even more highly regarded. Of course, Seiko kicked off the quartz revolution. They have spring drive. They have high beat movements. Now, we're going to get into Grand Seiko. They basically use Grand Seiko movements for these higher end watches, right? They're undecorated. The 8L55 is the high beat movement that the SLA 025 uses. It's an undecorated Grand Seiko movement. Spring drive, although the first spring drive watch was actually a Seiko, it's thought of as a Grand Seiko technology. But Creedor, which we're also going to talk about here in a bit, uses it as well. And then hand finishing. The SNR 045 has Zaratsu polishing, has the same hand finishing that you find on Grand Seiko watches. And it rivals anything the Swiss do. I had a Moser, beautifully finished. But, you put this SNR 045 next to the Moser, and I actually did not own them at the same time. I wish I did. And this is titanium, too. Zaratsu polishing on titanium. It's immaculate. The finishing is spectacular on this watch. And we'll go back to Citizen here for a bit. The Citizen that I had was also titanium and also beautifully finished. I mean, rivaling anything I've ever seen on stainless steel. And the Moser was white gold, which was, beautifully brushed and polished. Most of it was polished. There was a little bit of brushing here and there, but most of it was polished and, of course, impeccably done. So, yeah, Seiko has a lot going for it. Does that make them luxury? And again, I wrote down here, if Seiko were Swiss, we'd already call them luxury without hesitation, I think because of the vertical integration, and they would be selling a lot of different components to other Swiss brands. So we would think a lot more highly of them, I think. Like I said, High Beat, the Zaratsu polishing, and the artisans who trained for decades to do the finishing, to build these watches by hand. Same with Citizen. We're going to lump them in. And then, of course, there's Grand Seiko. Grand Seiko does not equal Seiko. It did at one point. And then there's King Seiko. There's a bunch of different variations. I know King Seiko is trying to establish themselves. They have the Vanek, which I know Bruce Williams bought and loves, but that's an acquired taste, I would say. Different boutiques. My Rolex authorized dealer has Grand Seiko. They do not have Seiko. There's different pricing, different customer, high-end collectors covet Grand Seiko. Kevin O'Leary. I remember in a video with Teddy, and we've talked about it before, he thought it was absurd that Seiko uses spring drive at all. That should be a Grand Seiko component because it becomes confusing for people, even though I think Seiko has a right to it because the first spring drive watch ever, like I said, was a Seiko. But yeah, so Grand Seiko, they used to be double branded, and then they went away from that. And I think, and I've read this here, Grand Seiko is a luxury brand, no question. You can get the 9F watches for what, $3,600? I think that's what I paid brand new for my Sea of Clouds. But they go up to the Kodo Tourbillons, which I've been lucky enough to see, $200-something thousand. Grand Seiko, definitely a luxury brand. They have it all. There's some exclusivity, finishing, polishing, all spectacular. Movements, spectacular. Exclusivity is there. Pricing, all of it there. But Grand Seiko is luxury despite Seiko, not because of it. I think people disregard Grand Seiko still. Maybe it happens less, but people still do because it has Seiko in the name. I still see it. When somebody posts a Grand Seiko, they'll say, nice Seiko. So, yeah, Grand Seiko, I think, because it has Seiko in the name, is still looked down on by some people. But, I mean, Grand Seiko holds up against Rolex. I think quality, finishing, brand power, probably not so much yet. But Grand Seiko, has just been reintroduced into our world not that long ago. Grand Seiko versus Omega. I think often I would put Grand Seiko quality control above Omega based on my ownership. I've owned 4 Grand Seiko and 4 Omega and all the way. Movement technology, Omega has coaxial. Grand Seiko has spring drive, 9F quartz, high beat. So they're right there. They are undeniably luxury, Grand Seiko. And then there's Creedor. I really want a Kuan. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. I saw the Aichi, the platinum version of the Kuan. And I'll try to put pictures of these because I know we don't talk about Creedor all that much. I said on the last episode, I think I only want to buy one watch this year. I think the Creedor Kuan is probably in the running, like top 3. That, the Titanium Santos, and then something else that's yet to be released that I know will catch my eye, Watches and Wonders, release or otherwise. Creedor is ultra thin. They use precious metals. That Aichi is platinum. Hand engraving, the enamel dials. Now, Creedor is also a bit of a confusing brand because you can go on Chrono24 and find Creedor for very inexpensive quartz, kind of weird looking, neo-vintage models. You can get a Creedor for, I swear, like $500. But then you can also get them for $50,000. But I think overall they are considered a luxury brand just for the finishing, even more so than Grand Seiko. I think there's 3 tiers, and Seiko, owns all these companies, I guess you could say. But there's Seiko, Grand Seiko, and then I think Creedor is still thought of above Grand Seiko, right? But yeah, the extremely limited production, only available in Japan. And I think that's starting to change now. You might be able to buy them in New York, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. At the Grand Seiko boutique in New York, you might be able to get Creedor, but that's about it. Really, unless you go to Japan, your only other option, there's a bunch of them on Chrono 24. But it's kind of a mic drop for Seiko. Creedor is a hidden gem. And I hope, just like The Citizen now is starting to be over here in the United States, I hope Creedor creeps more and more into the United States market. It's high horology, Japanese high horology all the way. All right, here we go. Probably why the debate will always rage on, and while I'll still kind of be conflicted too, I think Seiko is a little too accessible. Luxury for me equates to scarcity, flex value. Seiko is just not there, really, Like I said, there is some exclusivity if you miss the boat on some of these limited editions, but that's, again, a very small percentage of Seiko's offerings. There are some hype Seikos, but it calms down. Like that new speed timer that Keith loves. That keeps selling out. People are selling them above retail. That happened with the Panda speed timer, solar one. I believe that's solar. And now you can get those readily at a huge discount used. So that speed timer that Keith likes, that will follow the same trajectory. If you just wait, you'll be able to get it at a discount in no time. So here we go. My final verdict. Seiko is not luxury. Grand Seiko is luxury. And I would say Creedor is high horology luxury. So I'm still confused on it. But yeah, I posted to that guy on social media when I saw this. And we got into a little back and forth. But ultimately I said, listen, it's like arguing politics online on Facebook or something. I'm not going to change your mind and you're not going to change mine. So what's the point, right? So Seiko makes amazing watches. Let's just enjoy them. All right. I can't wait to hear your opinions on this. Do you think Seiko is luxury? Let me know. I would say, to close here before I forget this point, they do make luxury watches, but they're not a luxury brand. SNR 045 is a luxury watch all the way. That does not make a luxury brand out of Seiko, though. Yep, can't wait to hear. You can shoot me a message on Instagram. Tell me what you think. I know I have a lot of Seiko fans. I hear from them every time I mention Seiko in a podcast, so I can't wait for the responses to this. This podcast gets released as a YouTube video. Feel free to comment on there as well. You can shoot the podcast a text message, like I always say. I won't be able to text you back. I'm not being rude, but yeah, feel free. And yeah, so here we go. I know I missed a week and you're getting this one very late in the week. So I have a snow day coming up, I think a couple maybe. So I'm going to catch up. You are going to get this one today, probably on Sunday, actually. And then you will get another one. You'll get 2 more in like the next few days. Hopefully, I should have time to get 2 more out and then I'll be caught up and then we'll go from there. So yes, I will make up for almost 2 weeks now of not giving you a podcast by giving you 3 here in pretty rapid succession. So thank you so much for listening. And like I said, we're going to get blasted with snow. I mean, this storm rages from New England all the way to New Mexico, covering a lot of the country. So yes, be careful, be safe, stay inside, catch up on TV shows, movies, stay warm. And remember, sometimes you're the dog, sometimes you're the hydrant, but hey, at least you're outside. But like I said, bring that dog inside in this weather. We'll see you on the next episode of the Watch Dog Podcast. See you later.